Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Kalparyantam Vande Guru Paramparam Om. So namaste everyone. Last week we went over the first six Dhyana shlokas, and today we'll continue on from the seventh. So I think a lot of people were missing last week, and the video is up on YouTube in case you have missed it. So you can always go back and refresh your memory. So let's just begin with the Gītā Dhyana Shlokas, and then we can start reading from the text. So I'm sharing my screen now.
प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयः प्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दुग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत् वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनम् देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम् भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरणनदी कैवर्तकः केशवः पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलम् गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटम् नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितम् लोके सज्जनषट्पदैरहरः पेपीयमानं मुदा भूयाद्भारतपङ्कजं कलिमल प्रध्वंसिनः श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुः सुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः.
Okay, so just assign the numbers as I see it from left to right, and then we can just read accordingly. So, Jagadishwarji, will you be reading today? I'll come back to that later. Okay. So last time we left off at verse 6. So we can just begin from there. Okay, here we go. So Abhinavji, I think let's proceed in the format where we first read the verse and then we give the brief explanation.
What's the page number?
PDF 62.
Yeah, PDF
62.
62. Okay. So it's verse number 7. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the format? I'm sorry.
So what I mean is that first we just chant the verse, and then we'll just skip to the translation, like the direct translation, and then
Okay.
of course the commentary below. So I think it'll be very uncomfortable to read each word by word meaning, so we'll skip that.
Okay. Okay. I'll start.
Okay.
पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितं लोके सज्जनषट्पदैः हर हर हरः पेपीयमानं मुदा भूयाद्भारतपङ्कजं Kalimalapradvamsina Shreyase. May the spotless lotus Mahabharata, born out of the waters of the words of the son of Parashara, having the meaning of the Gītā as its sweet fragrance with its many stories as its stamens, fully opened by the revealing stories of the Lord Hari, relished happily day after day by the honeybees who are the right-thinking people of the world. This lotus of Mahabharata, which destroys the blemishes of Kali Yuga, may it be for our good. In praise of Mahabharata. This is a verse in praise of the Mahabharata itself. It says, "Let it be for the good of all people. Let this beautiful lotus epic be for moksha, liberation, the most desired end." It destroys all the problems of Kali Yuga. Kali is that which is selfish. Any evil is called Kali. Kali Yuga is a yuga, a time period when people become easily caught up in their own likes and dislikes, raga and dvesha. The Mahabharata has a number of guidelines for people to follow. It talks about ethics, personal, social, and political values, and even logistics through imperative illustrations.
So, thank you. Would you like to discuss anything based on what we just read? So I think I read in the Mahabharata that there were different versions over here, at least based on what people believe. That Kali Yuga began with the end of Lord Krishna's avatar on the earth, and there are other versions. Actually, from the Mahabharata that I read, the Kali Yuga is said to have begun. Dwapara Yuga ends on the 10th day of the Kurukshetra war, when Bhishma lays wounded, and that's when Kali Yuga begins, and that's when people even start beginning to cheat on the battlefield for the first time. So may I request whoever has the mic on to please just become very familiar with the um, mic. Yeah, thank you. Mute button. So because it all gets recorded. Yeah, so yeah, the Kali Yuga, at least from the version that I've read, is said to have begun on the 10th day of the war when Bhishma is wounded and when Abhimanyu's, the four people gang up on him and then they defeat him as well. So uh, I wonder if anybody has any other version of when Kali Yuga begins and when Dwapara ends.
Well, what I've always heard is Kali Yuga begins only after Krishna's departure from the world, or the earthly body's departure from the world. And according to the Uddhava Gītā, that's about a week. Dwaraka's deluge is about a week after his passing away. But Kali Yuga is onset in Parikshit Maharaja's reign. So that's about 37 years after the war.
I see. Yeah, these are both the versions I read, so I wasn't really sure which one is correct.
Either way, the Kali is set 3102 BCE. So this is 2015. So this is Kali to the 5117 is the year of Kali now.
I see. And from the time periods that we have in the Puranas, I think Kali goes on for 432,000 years, right? And that is what is put down.
432, yeah. So
Okay.
that's the Chatur Yuga.
I see.
I'll get. I thought it was 6102, but let me get back to you on that exact number.
I see. Actually, from what I recall, and maybe you can add more or correct me, but the way I saw it was that Kali Yuga is like 432,000 years. It's basically multiples of 2. So Dwapara Yuga is 864,
Correct.
and then Treta Yuga,
It's 3 times that, yeah.
yeah, 3 times. So I think like 432 times 3, 1296,
Right.
and 432 times 4. So it's like 1728.
Correct.
And what's interesting is when you add all of these up, then it basically adds up to 4,320.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is like one Mahayuga. Then I don't know the calculations ahead of that, like Manvantara, and then you have one Kalpa. So could you maybe shed some light on that? It'll just be interesting to go through.
Hindu cosmology is so deep that it goes not just into trillions of years. So I don't know if you have watched that clip by Carl Sagan.
Yes.
Carl Sagan used, yeah, the cosmos. So he said that Nataraja, or among the ancient civilizations, Hinduism is the only one that even comes close to modern science, or basically it's the closest to the modern sciences thought about how long the Earth has been in existence, how long the universe has been in existence, while many of the religions talk about 4004 BC being the creation of the world. Hinduism goes into 5 billion years, or there are even talks about 10 to like it goes on. Let me start with Shana or Nimesha. One batting of the eyelid, right?
Yeah.
So one batting of the eyelid is a Nimesha, and I don't know exactly. Like I'll just go and skip because there's a whole text on this. So they go into Nimesha, they go into Muhurtas.
That's 48 minutes.
Muhurta is 48 minutes. Then 2 Muhurtas is 1 Yama or Jama.
How do you spell that?
Yama or Jama.
Okay.
Yama. Yamam is the correct. Yaama. Yama.
Okay.
Okay. Or people also call it Jama, like Yamuna, Jamuna.
Yes.
And 60 we call it Narige in Tamil. Nadi. So there are 60 of these nadis, which is half a muhurta in one day. In Tamil, it's called Narige. Nadi probably means, yeah. No, no, 60 is 1 day.
Oh, it's 1 day. Okay, okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, 60 nadis is 1 day,
Okay.
right? And you have, according to Aryabhatta, you have 365.25 days. That is 365 days,
Yeah.
6 hours, 4 minutes, and 9 seconds, if I'm not wrong. Which is about 4 seconds or so in difference with the atomic clocks that we have today.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And and when you go on the other side, you have samvatsaras, then you have yugas, which is Krita, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. Some
Yeah.
people also call it Satya, yeah, Krita Yuga. And 4 yugas is 1 Chatur Yuga, right?
Yes.
And you have a Manu for each, and then you have one cycle of 7 to 14 Manus, 14 Manus.
Okay.
So we are in the 7th Manu, if I'm not wrong now, Vaivasvata. Then you have all the Savarnika Manus coming up.
Okay.
And this translates into Kalpa, Mahakalpa.
How many Manus is one Kalpa?
I think it's 14.
14. Okay.
Because 7 are done, 7 are yet to come.
Yeah.
And we are in the 28th Kalpa, Shvetavaraha Kalpe. Astavimshati Tame, sorry, the 28th Tama.
Sorry, I missed that one.
Tama, T-H-A-M, Tama.
Okay.
Astavimshati Tame.
Did we define that? I don't remember.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Manu, Kalpa, Astavimshati Tame. So that's Shvetavaraha Kalpa is what we have now.
Okay.
That is the name of the Kalpa that we have now.
Okay.
And these are all cyclic creations and dissolutions.
Yes.
Right. So it's not a one-time Big Bang, one-time dissolution.
Right. And interesting that you also pointed out about Carl Sagan, because at least the way I look at it is that the Hindu scriptures, they talk about the Earth being 4.32 billion years, as we see over here, whereas the best scientific estimates today bring it close to 4.5 billion. That's incredibly close. And as you mentioned, Carl Sagan said that no other philosophy on this planet in all of history has ever come so close to what the most recent scientific predictions are. So, if you look at the other Western traditions, they say 6,000 years. And
Right.
that's, Swamiji jokes that there are some homes in India which are older than that. So,
Yeah. And it's amazing. One thing I saw about Aryabhatta when I was reading about him was not just that the Earth goes around the Sun.
yeah,
He said the Earth goes around the Sun in an elliptical orbit in a sidereal axis. Sidereal axis is, we all think that Earth starts, say on January 1st, Earth starts at a particular point, goes around on December 31st or January 1st, it comes back to the exact same point where it started. Right?
yes,
This is our thinking. Aryabhatta says no. It starts, think of it as a spiral, right? So
yeah,
it never comes back to the same point. It keeps going in a spiral.
yes.
And why does it go in a spiral?
Because the sun also moves through the galaxy in its
Through the
orbit.
galaxy. Exactly. Because there. So the sidereal axis is not in reference to the sun, it's in reference to the star and the general cosmos.
Yes,
And this again brings up the topic about horoscopes and all those things. Now, when you have an English birthday, you say you were born on so and so date. Let's say somebody is born in 2015. Now, 8,000 years later, 2015 makes no sense. 2015 from what?
right.
But if you have your horoscope where you have your positions of the planets with reference to the date that you were born in place, you can backtrack it to say this is exactly the day you were born.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So now you can actually backtrack and say, according to Valmiki, this is when Ramayana happened. That's possible.
Yeah.
I have a question. And certainly, our ancestors have used different units of time. So, on what basis is it determined that Kali Yuga is 4,32,000 years and so on? Because I even read some other estimates on the internet, and I really don't know how to see which one is the correct one and which one is the which one is the wrong one.
So the question is how long, or how did they determine it, right?
No, how do we map Kali Yuga to 4,32,000 years? On what basis?
I'm not sure. Like, I don't know how exactly they come up with that number.
Okay.
But one thing I did miss out is all this Mahayugas and all. So I think it's one Chatur Yuga, if I'm not wrong. I'll get back to you on that. Is one day of Brahma, and then you have 100 days of Brahma becoming one day of Vishnu, and so on.
Yeah.
So that leads you to an even bigger number, which it goes into 10 to the power of 2 digits. It's not even 1-digit number.
Yeah, I think that's even ahead of the Kalpa, right? It's even larger in scale.
Larger, much larger.
Yeah, this is interesting, and even I think just if I can take a stab at what Abhinavji asked, the way at least this is the way I come to resolution in my mind about the karmic model. I don't see that there is a sudden stage in time where like some gateways open up and then you enter a new yuga. It's kind of a very gentle transition. So it's very indicative of like for instance if you see Satya Yuga, there's never a time when there is no adharma or when there's only dharma, right? It's always in a kind of like a flux. So it's just a greater or lesser measure. So in Satya Yuga, if you see, then people were more or less dharmic. For the most part, people regulated themselves well, and so much adharma wasn't in vogue. Even if you compare Ramayana, which was in Treta Yuga, Ravan, as bad as he wasn't a cheater, right? At least he followed certain codes of conduct. Like he didn't cheat in the war, and he gained a lot of siddhis for the wrong reasons. But whatever he gained was again like dharmically done, though his actions eventually were very adharmic in nature. But still, if you compare him to Shakuni, like you can literally say that Shakuni was a cunning and very very pitiable character. But Ravana, though you may say that he did a lot of wrong things, there was something admirable about him as well. So the same amount of adharma was not present in the previous yugas as they are in the subsequent. Similarly, if you see even Kali Yuga, it is today we are predominantly living in dharmic times. So the war of Mahabharata was still decently fought, though eventually when they killed Abhimanyu and then things started going wrong. Yeah, that's a different matter. But until then, things were better. In today's wars, if you see the Islamic invasion of India, they would like enter homes, they would kill women, they would kill children, they would. There's a I'll probably send a news site later, but there's a place in Delhi where they still have these stakes hanging, and then they impaled hundreds of thousands of Hindus together in a single day without any mercy. They impale them on these stakes, and the skeletons are still hanging in Delhi. So the code of conduct definitely keeps getting worse over time, but it's a smooth transition. Like there's no instant phase where one yuga ends and the other begins. It kind of like melts into the other. So that's the way I look at it. Maybe Sundarji has more inputs.
It reminds me of one of the quotes from Swami Chinmayananda, where he says in the Krita Yuga, evil existed in 2 different worlds. There were Devas and there were Asuras. In Treta Yuga, it existed in 2 different countries, in Ayodhya and in Lanka. And in Dwapara, it became 2 different people or families. And in Kali, it exists in the same person.
That's beautiful.
Right. So it's all in perspective. And one footnote I would like to mention when you talked about Kala and time and all.
Yeah.
I just told you what I've read, but I'm not an expert in the Kala. Like I have to still do a lot of reading. So this is what I read and remember.
I see.
But if we go into Kalpa itself, because one of the Vedangas is Kalpa, it goes into precise measurement of every single time aspect. Time has been studied by our ancestors to a degree that no other civilization has studied it.
Yes.
And finally, they dismiss it saying it's all, perspective. When it comes to Vedanta, time doesn't have any value.
Yes. So yeah, this was an interesting discussion, definitely. Thanks so much for all these inputs.
Thank you, Sundarji, for this wonderful input.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There was a good discussion between Sundarji and Prashant and everybody here. I was curious to know what is the book that I think somebody referred to, Carl Sagan's book. Where
It's not a book. I'll send you the YouTube link.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So in case anybody hasn't watched the TV series, it's called Cosmos, and I was just speaking to Unnati the other day about it, about how beautiful the series is, and it was produced in 1980 actually, and it was the first of its kind because it really revolutionized popular science for the masses, and it brought about a deep understanding of science in a very palpable way. So people could easily digest it. There are very nice animations, and his commentary is beautiful. So it gives a grand appreciation of Ishvara Shrishti if you watch Cosmos. That's what I personally believe. So definitely, if everybody can get the chance to watch it, it was broadcast on PBS, and it's available as on YouTube. The entire series is available. You can just search for it. But I think Sundarji will send you the specific clip where he's talking about the Hindu time periods. So that will be very interesting.
Yeah, it's posted already.
Abhyudaji, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. The lotus, that is the Mahabharata. What kind of a lotus is the Mahabharata? Just like any other lotus, it is born of water. It comes from the water of words. This water of words springs forth from Vyasa, the son of Parashar. Also, this word lotus is as clean as the lotus in the pond. It has the strong, sweet fragrance of the meaning of the Gītā. A meaning is something silent. It is something that you understand. You can repeat a word because it is a sound, but its meaning is always silent. You can see a flower, but the smell cannot be seen anywhere. You can only sense it. Similarly, the meaning of the Gītā makes the whole Mahabharata wave with fragrance. This epic is the lotus that exudes the fragrance of the meaning of the Gītā. There are many small stories within stories. These stories are like the rows of stamens of the lotus. The stamens of the saffron flower are the most fragrant, whereas stamens of the lotus are known for their beauty. If the Gītā is the fragrance of the Mahabharata, then the stories of the stamen which impart beauty to it. Because of Krishna's presence in the Mahabharata, it is the Lord's story. Without it, the Mahabharata would be a lotus that had not yet bloomed. The opening of a bud generally requires the sun. Here, the Lord's story is the sun. It opens up the Mahabharata with devotion. It provides the light necessary for this opening.
It's a beautiful analogy. Is there anything to discuss on what we just covered? Okay, I guess we can move on to the next section. If you can think of anything, just please interrupt. Ishwar uncle, you next.
Yeah, let me go ahead. Enjoyment of the Gītā. The Gītā is being enjoyed happily. People are drinking deeply from it, taking more and more day after day. Who are these people? They are likened to an insect with 6 legs, the honeybee for instance. Human beings have 5 sense organs plus a thinking intellect. Some extra intellect is necessary to extract the nectar from the epic flower that is the Gītā. The people who enjoy the Gītā are therefore thinking people, those who use their intellects. Let this Gītā, which is the destroyer of all problems in Kali Yuga, of the problems caused by likes and dislikes, be for the good of all people. The next verse is in praise of the Lord, which says, I salute the Lord who is all Ananda, joyfulness, whose form and expression are Ananda, and who is Lord Krishna.
Uh, very often we see that at least I have been grown with this thought that one should not read Mahabharata because it involves a lot of family quarrels and fighting, and everyone recommends that you should read Ramayana instead. It's considered as auspicious, and of course Gita is considered as auspicious to read, but nobody recommends to read Mahabharata as a child. So I guess this verse beautifully brings out the essence of, taking Mahabharata as a glory and a treasure of wisdom.
Yeah. In fact, if I can comment here, somebody asked Swami Paramathanandaji this question, and he said it's just an urban legend. It's a folk legend which somehow crept into society. But a person who actually reads the Mahabharata and understands the different family dynamics between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, they can avoid a lot of unnecessary quarrels in their own family if they can learn from these mistakes. So Mahabharata actually, I would say a person who is enriched by the wisdom of the Mahabharata would know how to live a better dharmic life and be more successful in their own family. So that's what Swami Paramathanandaji said when
Yes.
answering the question.
And I guess Swamiji also shares that there are a lot of psychological problems which erupt into each one's mind during which we see during Mahabharata. So he comments that the psychological problems are there in this generation, but in future it will become the sociological problems. So this is a very beautiful idea which one should always keep in mind, that nevertheless Mahabharata has a lot of fighting and quarrels and plotting, but definitely these are the sociological problems which we are facing right now. So everything has a learning behind it.
In fact, I would go so far as to say that people should stop watching Ekta Kapoor's TV serials, because that's what's really breaking families, I guess, right? Because at least Mahabharata has a solution. You see a quarrel, then you learn from the Mahabharata that this is not the way to do it. Whereas in the modern, soap operas and all that, we see people actually feel tempted to live that kind of lifestyle. So, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, very interesting, right? Yeah, I think as Sundarji put it, in the Mahabharata, you learn by understanding the instances and not to repeat what has been already gone through people, and you emulate from the mistakes, and not to hopefully recreate those mistakes and learn through your mistakes. You can already understand from the mistakes made by the characters and apply it to your own lives.
Very true. And there's also a saying that, what is there in the Mahabharata, or rather, let's put it this way, whatever is there outside will be also there in the Mahabharata. And whatever is not in the Mahabharata will not be found anywhere else. So anything that you ever want to learn, whether it's Artha, Dharma, Kama, Moksha, all your Purusharthas, Mahabharata addresses them. It teaches you how to dharmically pursue all your activities in life, and of course, the center of the Mahabharata, the focal point here is the Gita, and the Gita is the nectar of non-duality. So the Mahabharata is a beautiful scripture that I believe every single human being should read, like from start to finish, at least at some point in their life. And for who are not aware, Pujya Swamiji has given a set of talks on the Mahabharata as well, not just the Gita, but he's given a pravachan on I think 96 to 100 talks on the Mahabharata, and there is also a transcript available you can buy from the Arsha Vidya Gurukulam. So I think a couple of months back I purchased the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, both the transcripts.
Oh, very nice.
So Karishmaji, you want to go?
Yeah. Pranam everyone. Verse 8. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripatamaham vande paramananda madhavam. I salute Krishna, the Lord of Lakshmi wealth, whose nature is fullness, whose kripa, grace makes the mute eloquent and causes lame to scale mountain tops. Madhava is another name for Lord Krishna, one who has all the resources and wealth with him, who is Bhagavan, the Lord. I salute the one who is Madhava, Bhagavan, and whose expression and essential nature is fullness, Ananda, the Lord's grace. This verse,
Sorry. Yeah, it's a short one. Go ahead.
okay. This verse adds something more, grace, kripa. Grace is something that is earned. It is not something that the Lord randomly distributes day by day. If he did, he would be partial, which is not the case. Grace is a graceful expression for karma phala. Karma is what you do and phala is the result of what you do.
So here's an open question. Like maybe we can discuss it. So does anyone know the four anugrahas that we have? Ishvara anugraha, Shastra anugraha, Guru anugraha, and Atma anugraha. So if somebody would like to discuss that. Anyone familiar with those terms? Like Swami Padmatanaji uses this very often, and so Ishvara Anugraha is what Pujya Swamiji talks about over here, which is the Lord's grace, Bhagavan's grace. Shastra Anugraha is the grace of the Shastras, because the teaching that is made available to you is available in the Shastras. There's no other source for them. The Guru Anugraha is the grace of the Guru who unfolds the Shastra for you, because the Shastra is something that may be very cryptic to a person. And yesterday we had a nice Mananam session where we spoke about it. The Guru really, why do you need a Guru? And I think this is an open question that we can throw out right now. So if you have the Shastra, like for example, if we have this entire text of the Gītā, it answers most of your questions, right? So why do we need a Guru? So let's maybe discuss that for a while.
Why do we need a guru?
Yes.
To guide in the right direction. I mean, that is what basically would need a guru for, to tell us the right direction.
Okay, so can you give like a concrete example, maybe?
For example, since you're talking about Gītā, whoever reads Gītā will understand at his level only, you know. But if you get the understanding from a guru, he will teach you at the right level, or he will rather take you to that level and make you understand. Because whenever you read Gītā, you will understand Gītā at your level only.
Yes.
So
Yes, that's a very valid point. Very true. Then any others?
I think that by myself I wouldn't have understood the Gita. It's only because of Swamini that I'm getting the essence of what is being written. At least for me, this is the experience.
Experience? Sorry, could you repeat that last part?
I'm saying that at least for me, this is the experience.
Okay.
Having this book is one thing, reading it's another thing. But when Swamini does the class, explains everything, so it's a difference from my own reading and her explanation.
Yes, that is true. So one reason, as Soumyaji, right? Soumyaji put it that the Guru gives you the right direction. That you may read something and you may have understood it to mean a certain thing, and the Guru may fine tune your understanding to take you to the correct way of thinking. So, for example, if I read a verse, the verse may mean something to me if I read it by myself, but then the Guru may tell me that no, this is what it means, something differently. And as Karishmaji also put it, that yeah, the Guru, the experience is that the teaching is more palpable, and it's easier to understand also when the Guru explains it, and you can also avoid a lot of mistakes that may be made along the way of understanding. Somebody once asked Swami Dayanandaji, Pujya Swamiji, that who was a Guru, and the person expected, okay, can I please request you to mute your mics, whoever's mics are still on? So yeah, just one request, please. I keep repeating it each time, but become very familiar with the mute button on top, because it becomes very distracting otherwise, and I can't hear myself also then. So So somebody asked Pujya Swamiji, who is a guru? And they expected a really long response. And Pujya Swamiji simply said in one sentence, the one who makes you see. The guru has a certain vision of the Shastras. The guru has imbibed the teaching and most probably has assimilated as well if the guru is a Brahmanistha. So the one who has assimilated this teaching well and the one who's able to see it in the correct light, it's also he alone can make you see it the way he sees it, right? So I may see the teaching in one way. For example, if I read the Gita, for me, the Tatparyam of the Gita may be Karma Yoga. That, oh, Bhagwan tells Arjuna that go fight the war, and Arjuna makes up these excuses ki I want to take sannyasa, but then why are you making me do these heinous actions? And then Bhagwan says, no, this is your kartavya, this is your duty, you have to fight the war. So for a person who has that bend of mind, he may see the entire Tatparyam of the Gita to be Karma Yoga. For somebody else, it may be bhakti. That, since Krishna Bhagwan talks in the first person singular over here, he may think that, I should become a Krishna Bhakta and all other gods are demigods, like some traditions believe, right? So I don't want to take names, but there are some traditions in our own fold where they reduce other gods to like a demigod status. I don't even know what that term means, but that's what it is. So then that might be one interpretation somebody can take. But then here the Guru makes it very clear firsthand that the whole Tatparyam of the Gita is that it is a Yoga Shastra and it is also primarily a Moksha Shastra, because ultimately the yoga is going to condition you. The Karma Yoga, the different sorts of meditation, whatever you want to call it, all of these things condition you to assimilate the knowledge well, and ultimately, as the Gita itself says, Nahi Jnanena Sadrusham. There is nothing more purifying than knowledge. So the whole Tatparyam of the Gita is self-knowledge ultimately. It is Vedanta. So the Guru really makes you see the teaching in the way he sees it, and that's why that's one more reason why you need the Guru. And yesterday I had so I want to share this small anecdote. There was a person who added me on Facebook, and he asked me if you need a Guru. And I've usually encountered these discussions, and I've become a little tired of them, because usually people ask loaded questions. They already have a preconceived notion, but then they kind of like ask you something to confirm their own understanding, which may not necessarily be right. So he's asking me if we need a guru, and I responded that yes, we need it. And he says, I don't think so, because the Gita. I think the Gita makes very clear that you don't need a guru. So then I asked him if you understand the Gita, and he said, I think I 99% understand the Gita. You see the contradiction. So then I asked him, then why are you asking me the question if you need a guru if you already know that you don't? He said, I'm 99% sure, but I'm not sure about that 1%. And that's exactly why you need a guru, because you're still not sure and you have these questions, and therefore there's somebody who can give you these answers. And I told him very humbly that I am a student, I'm still studying my Shastras. You probably need to find a guru who can address your doubts for you. But clearly you need one, because you still have questions, though you believe that you don't. So,
But the Gita does say you need a guru.
Sorry?
Tadvidhi pranipadena pariprashnena sevaya upadeshanti te jnanam. Right? So it says that you have to approach a guru with tadvidhi pranipadena pariprashnena sevaya. In chapter 7, if I'm not wrong.
Okay.
Krishna says that you have to approach somebody who already knows the tattva, and through your service and humility and servitude, you will be doing seva for them, and through proper questions, they'll be able to answer your doubts. So I'm not sure where this gentleman got the notion that you don't need a guru from the Gita.
Exactly why he needs a guru. So like I'm sure you also encountered a lot of people where they believe in this sort of self-study, and they treat the guru as the fraud. They're lungi people, they're frauds, they're all out to make money, and the tradition has suffered so much due to this misconstrued notion of who a guru is. So at least as far as my teaching goes, my own learning goes, when I went to the Gurukulam a couple of years back, and I had a lot of questions for Pujya Swamiji, and he was very kind to spend enough amount of time to address some of my doubts, and definitely whatever self-reading I had done throughout the years, it was meaningless in front of those few simple replies that he gave me. It really aligned me to think in a certain way, to understand in a certain way, and to also ask the right questions, because that is something I learned from the Guru, that you eventually your I think to an extent your ability, or rather your understanding, is reflected in the quality of your questions. So over time, if your questions still go back to the same regressive way of thinking that okay, why this, why that, after a point, the Guru himself will dismiss things as mithya for you, as Sundarji alluded earlier, that we have a whole branch of study in the Vedas which cover the subject of time. And then the Vedanta itself says that this is mithya. So, eventually, like I had a couple of questions about Sushupti Avastha. And maybe, I won't say disagreements, but maybe my own lack of understanding disallowed me to come to the same conclusion as Shankara did about one aspect of Sushupti. So, I was very grateful to have that cleared. So, yeah, I hope people who are even listening on YouTube understand that one cannot study the Shastra by themselves. They need the Anugraha of the Guru. They need the Shastra Anugraha, Guru Anugraha. They need the Anugraha of Ishvara, of course, to create the right conditions for you to pursue this knowledge. And ultimately, you also need your own Anugraha, Atma Anugraha, because it's comparable to a waterfall. There's water that's continuously flowing, but you need to take the effort to bathe under it. Otherwise, it's going to be a waste. So, you may have all the anugrahas ready for you in life. You may have the right kind of situation. You may have the right environment, the right economic background, whatever you need ready for you to pursue this teaching. But if you yourself don't take the effort, then there's nothing that's going to come out of it. So these 4 anugrahas are deeply essential for every sadhaka.
Yeah, very rightly said. And this brings up the thing of having Shraddha in a Guru and also in the Shastras. Because unless you have Shraddha, you can't proceed ahead.
Very true, very true. And Sundarji, on the topic of Shraddha, since we were having the Mananam session with Shukaji, I was wondering if you could maybe share some of your inputs in more detail.
On which topic?
On the topic of Shraddha that we were discussing the other day.
Okay.
So, I think there was an open question that was put up in Sundarji's forum that how does Shraddha develop?
Yeah, okay. I remember that question, like it was 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Right. And how do you even go and understand the Shastra? Because you have to have that faith, or I won't say faith, but Shraddha in the Shastra, because there's no English word for it. So how do I even trust? How do I know that the Shastra is there? Like I trust my eyes, I trust my ears. How can I trust the Shastra as the same? Because it doesn't give me a proof that's tangible, right? Physical. So the question was, if I were to go and sit in a class and say, somebody is telling me that you are Brahman, and how can I have that faith or Shraddha in that? How do I develop that Shraddha? So the question that Prashantji is asking, how do I develop the Shraddha, or how do I have the Shraddha?
No, based on what Sukaji had put up, how do you have the first instance of Shraddha? Like, how do you give the benefit of the doubt to the Shastra that I want to, there's something worthwhile here and there's something that might be true and I want to study it. So that first instance where you're motivated to take up this teaching.
Okay. So I believe, like in that session, let's not go into what I believe, but in that session it was talked about that everybody knows that aham, like I exist. And therefore when the Shastras tell me that you exist and you are truth, then you know that there is something valid in there for you to go sit and learn about it, right? And that gives validity because it's a personal experience, not something that's taught to you about something you don't already know. It's a subject that's very familiar to you, and Shastra guides you from a lower understanding of who you are. You know that you exist.
Yes.
But currently you think that I that exists is the body. And when it perishes, you're afraid of it, or you're afraid of losing that body. Whereas Shastra teaches you that you always exist, and that you are Nirmala, you are Prakasha, you are always available. And the first instance is always because of that conviction, or let's go and sit, and what it tells directly relates to your direct experience. But I also believe that it's because of your Sukruta and because of your previous state of mind or understanding.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that, and I believe, like personally, I believe that was a missing component which we didn't discuss the other day, because the first, as you very rightly said, is that it is something that's very familiar to you. Here, you've taken yourself to be something that you always believed. These are all the conditionings that we've gone through for many lifetimes, and this beautiful Veda comes to you and says that no, you are not what you think you are. You are far grander. You are far larger. You are complete. You are Purnam. And so you are tempted to study this because, as you very rightly said, and as we discussed the other day, that it's a conclusion that first of all it benefits you, right? Because you wouldn't want to study something which says that you are small, you're little, you're insecure, you're incomplete, you are somebody's servant, you're somebody's you're eternally under the shadow of somebody else. But at the same time, and I also wanted to put this up as an open question, we have other traditions which do believe that, right? Like for example, if you see Islam or Christianity or any other school of Dvaita, you are in the shadow of the so-called God, and you are uh, infinitely separated from this Bhagavan, and the Jeev, Jagat and Ishvara are different, and yet people have undying Shraddha even in that. So that is where I completely agree with what you say, because there's another element here where we talk about the prarabdha, your own past punya that you've earned, which allows you to transcend that sort of I think you don't fall into the trap over there, right? Where you take yourself to be a separated individual from Ishvara, if I understand what you mean correctly. Your own punya comes to your rescue to make you appreciate Advaita Jnanam, right?
Correct. It's not punya, it's your previous karmas. And one thing about anugraha, anugraha is always there. It's like the sun that's always shining. Ishvara anugraha is always there. It's only those who can pick it up can pick it up. Like Krishna was always there in Mahabharata, or during the Mahabharata time. Duryodhana also saw him, Shakuni also saw him, and the 4 other Pandavas also saw him. But only Arjuna could grasp what Krishna was talking about, the Vishwarupa and all those things. So Guru could be right in front of you, and it also depends upon you on how much you can take. Right?
Yes.
So where Kathopanishad, Yamadharmaraja talks to Nachiketas, and one thing he says is, finding a guru is easy, but finding a good disciple is very tough.
Very true.
So one of the questions I'm seeing on the sidelines is Soumya ji is asking about Gītā 4:34, which is Tadvidhi Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevaya. Yeah, it's chapter 4, verse 34.
Shall we just skip to that chapter? I'm sorry.
No.
See the explanation?
I just posted something.
Oh, okay.
I was talking about a quote earlier.
I was only asking, like, what does 4.34 mean? So it means chapter 4 and verse 34, is it?
That's correct.
Okay. So,
Sorry.
okay. Because whenever I see some kind of, they quote Gītā, so that's when they give all this. So I was not aware, like, this is what it means. So I just wanted to know that. That's all.
Yeah.
Even Bible has something like this, no? They keep giving these kind of things.
Yeah, it is chapter, book, chapter, and verse.
Yeah, it's standard notation. Like, in fact, Upanishads get more complicated that way, right? Because you have chapter, you have like subsections, and you have the verses. So Gita is pretty simple that way, thankfully. 2 dimensions.
We have 108 Upanishads, right?
Not necessarily. So that is the Mukti Pada canon, I think, that you're referring to. So again, what you call the Upanishad is, to an extent, it is subjective, because again, the Upanishadic teachings are strewn across the Vedas, though they are concentrated in certain regions. So there are some Upanishads which are found in the Brahmana, some which are found in the Aranyaka. That way, there's some places where you see that there are 1008 Upanishads. Then some say there are 108, which is called like the Mukti Pada canon, and that is like considered the mainstream Upanishads. But as Pujya Swamiji once said in his talks, that the teachings of the Upanishads are pretty much all over the Vedas. Like, for example, if you see the Purusha Sukta, right, that is not considered an Upanishad, but then it is completely Advaita. It's absolute non-duality. There's no room for Dvaita when you read the Purusha Sukta. Similarly, there are many other so if you see the Sri Rudram also, there's so much Vedanta, there's so much Advaita present in there. So I would say it would not be a good idea to like hard code that there are only 108 Upanishads and these are the places where the knowledge of the self is found. But yeah, one can say that those are the main compiled Upanishads which we are like very familiar with. Out of those, there are 10 which are considered Mukhya Upanishads, And it's only called Mukhya not because there's something like quality-wise better about them, but those are the 10 Upanishads that Shankaracharya thought that he should write a commentary on because they were more or less complete as far as what he was trying to explain goes. So, please fill the gaps if I'm missing any. There's Ishavasya Upanishad, and there's a verse where all of these are put together, right, Sundarji? Like there are 10 Upanishads in one verse.
There is one shloka with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember the shloka itself, but I know it's Isha Kena Kata Mundaka Mandokya Aitareya Brihadaranyaka Chandogya. What?
And Taittiriya.
Aitareya. 10.
And what about Shvetavastavara Upanishad? I think.
Shvetashvatara?
Yeah.
Not sure. I'll have to go back because I haven't read that Upanishad yet.
Okay. I see.
Yeah. See.
So yeah, so basically, like these are the 10 essential ones, and essential because Shankaracharya wrote a commentary on that, and because that is why we have such a beautiful teaching tradition with like all the vrittis and the Vartikas and all present on these Upanishads. So if you purchase any Upanishads from the Gurukulam, or if you want to listen to any talks, you'll usually find these 10. I think Kaivalya Upanishad is also commented upon. So in some cases, some people very rarely say there are 11 which Shankara commented upon, but to my understanding, there are only 10.
Okay.
And just in case, like if anybody wants any information, the first Upanishads to begin with, as far as the Gurukulam recommendations go, and even Swami Paramathanji, he begins with the Mundaka, and then he takes up the Kena. So Ishavasya and Mandukya are the shortest Upanishads. Mandukya is the shortest one. I think it has only 8 or 11 verses. I'm not exactly sure, but it is also the most cryptic.
It has 12.
Sorry, 12?
12.
Okay, 12 verses, yeah. And it's very cryptic. You don't want to begin with that. So I know a lot of people, and I think we've had this discussion earlier in the Tattvabodha sessions, that people get confused about a so-called fourth state, which is Turiya, which is present in the Mandukya Upanishad. And many times I have people who come up to me and say that how do I experience this fourth state? And then again you have to redirect them to Swami Paramathanji's talks that it is not really a state, but it is yourself. It is that which is present in all the states, just as the clay is present in all the different varieties of pots. So the clay is like the fourth pot, you can say, in that sense. So same way the Turiya is the fourth state, which is only you. It's not technically a state. It's just kind of an expression that's used. So I would say if you're proceeding with the Upanishad, start with the Mundaka, then move on to the Kena, and then you can do Katha, and then after that you can maybe take some freedom to change the order around. But don't touch the Mandukya and the Ishavasya Upanishad until you get to the end of all your Upanishadic studies. So.
I think SPG himself says in which order he usually teaches the Upanishads.
Yeah.
In one of his first lectures of Mundaka Upanishad.
Okay, I'll refer back to that. In fact, I have I'll show you something I have. Custom course outline. So I don't know if I've shown this to anybody before, but this is a customized course outline. And actually, from what I've heard, Swami Paramathanji highly customizes the outlines for people. And I pretty much mixed the outline of like Pujya Swamiji and Swami Paramathanji together. So of course, the first thing that I don't know if everybody can see it. Let me make it bigger, maybe. First thing, of course, to ignore this for the point at this point. The first thing you begin with is the Intro to Vedanta and Tattvabodha, because that is the base, it's the foundation for everything else that you study. This again, Upadesh Saram is as unfolded by Pujya Swamiji or Swami Paramathanji. I strongly don't recommend just reading Ramana Maharishi's text because it's not going to reveal too much to you without the unfolding of a guru. And there have been some controversies here, but I don't want to get into those. Mundaka Upanishad is like the first Upanishad. Ken Upanishad is the second. Then Panchadashi chapter 1 is dealt with. Then of course you do Value of Values, which I want to get to at some point with a group over here. Bhagavad Gītā, and then Katha Upanishad and all of these other Upanishads are covered. And of course Brahma Sutra Bhashya is recommended for people provided they want to teach. It's not considered essential. I've spoken to a lot of acharyas and they say that you can skip Brahma Sutra as far as your own personal Shravanam and Mananam is concerned. But if you plan to ever teach other people, then it becomes indispensable because Brahma Sutras is where everything is put together in very categorically. and it's structured very logically. It's kind of like a binary structure, like a tree, and it takes a paksha and then it takes a siddhanta, and I don't know, maybe Sundarji has more experience with this, but Brahma Sutras, a lot of people question if they should start reading the Brahma Sutra, and I would say save it till the end. Complete your bread and butter first, which Pujya Swamiji says are the Gītā and Upanishads, and then maybe if you have availability, you can start the Brahma Sutra.
That's true. Brahma Sutra, you'll have to know the other things before you come to Brahma Sutra, because the nitty-gritty and all the ambiguities are cleared in the Brahma Sutra. So in order to know the ambiguity, you'll have to know the text by heart.
I see.
Right. So what Swami Paramarthananda says is it's more like the court of law, Brahma Sutra, where any doubts are brought and it's cleared. If there's no doubt about a particular subject, then it has no place in the Brahma Sutra. Only things with ambiguity are brought into the discussions in Brahma Sutra, and they are cleared. But I personally feel that it's something that you have to at least listen once in your life. You have to, because the depth of discussions is unmatched.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct about that. In fact, at some point I was scared to start the Brahma Sutra because I thought I wouldn't like to listen to anything else after that. So I'm currently actually going through all the Upanishads and the Gītā just for that reason. I started the Brahma Sutra Swami Paramathananda ji. He's
Right.
given 398 talks. Very
Correct.
elaborate. My goodness. He doesn't start the first chapter until I think talk 15 or 16.
That's correct.
So,
And you'll listen to the intro, because the you know that's rope on the snake,
Adhyasa Bhashya, yeah.
adhyasa. So just that example of rope and snake, I think it goes on to 2 hours of discussion. And at the end of it, you'll be very clear about what adhyasa is. Because the questions that are raised about the rope, you see a rope and you think it's a snake, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
You cannot see a rope and think it's a hippopotamus. Because a snake is shaped like a rope. But Jagat is not shaped like Brahman. Completely different. One is Purna, the other is Alpa. One is Satyam, the other is Mithya. So how do you, and these are the questions that are asked. Second is, you cannot mistake a rope that's elsewhere. It has to be in front of you. But Brahman is not in front of you. Jagat you can see in front of you, but Brahman is not in front of you, quote unquote, in front. Right? So these are the questions that are raised by the Purva Pakshi, and they are beautifully answered by the 12-year-old or 16-year-old Shankaracharya.
Beautiful.
Wow.
So you'll have to listen to at least the Adhyasa Bhashya, if not the whole Brahma Sutra.
Yes, and also since we are on that topic, I actually have a very extremely detailed Adhyasa Bhashya talk, set of talks. It's 413 pages, and this is by an AVG Acharya, Swami Siddharthanandaji, who taught, as he was one of the teachers in the resident course. And this is like 400 plus pages only on Adhyasa Bhashya. So if anybody wants to understand the rope snake perfectly, like this is the place to go. So Sundarji, I'll send this to you as well if you're interested.
Sure, please. And actually, I'm writing a play where I've, like just last week, right? Tulasidasa did opposite Adhyasa Bhashya.
Sorry, could you? I didn't hear you correctly.
No, I'm writing a play about something, and
Yeah.
Tulasidasa, he had Adhyasa in a reverse way. Everybody looks at a rope and sees a snake. He saw a snake and thought it's a rope. Yeah. So I'm writing a play on Jiva Yatra.
Okay, I see. And where are you conducting this play?
This is coming for the Shankar Jayanti that's upcoming on in May.
Okay,
It's for kids drama.
Oh, very
wonderful.
nice.
Please record it if you can, and maybe if you can post a YouTube link, we'd all love to watch it.
Sure, I'll do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Nice.
The Adhyasa Bhasha commentary you're referring to is from Swami Paramatmananda ji, is it?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I would,
just some,
yeah, go ahead.
oh, sorry, just some background on the Adhyasa Bhashya. So as everybody might know, the Brahma Sutras are written by Badarayana, who we identify as Ved Vyasa. And before beginning the commentary on the Brahma Sutras, Shankaracharya writes his monumental introduction to it, which is called Adhyasa Pasha. And that's where the rope snake example and the whole idea of superimposition is deeply explored. So it is actually considered one of the most monumental introductions to any book that's ever been written. And it's definitely mandatory reading at least once in your life, as Sundarji says, the whole Brahma Sutra, in fact. So, in fact, Ishwar uncle, you remember that when you had gone to the Gurukulam, you brought the Brahma Sutra text for me, right? So
Yes.
it also deals with Adhyasa Bhasha to begin with. So if you read I'll probably get a couple of more copies. It's a very nice text, and Swami Paramathananda ji has given 398 talks on that, and Pujya Swamiji has given about like 240 or 250 talks on that.
I see.
So, thanks so much, Sundarji, for all these wonderful inputs. Can we go to?
I think Sundarji's, I've written it down. The Brahma Sutra has to be listened to at least once in your lifetime. So that will be my goal.
Yeah. So I think we'll go to the next subheading, prayer as an action. Who's next? I don't even remember now.
Okay.
Smita ji.
Soumya, it is me.
Oh, sorry. I actually Smita ji joined a bit late, so let's add her in, and then you
Sure.
can come next. Okay. Because that's how I see the order in my screen over here.
All right. No.
Hari Om. Prayer is an action. Prayer is also a karma, an action. Because it is an action, it necessarily produces a result. The result is twofold: seen drishta phala and unseen adrishta phala. One example of a seen result is the psychological benefit of prayer. The very fact that you are able to pray is itself a benefit. Also, as a result of prayer, there can be the psychological benefit of having someone upon whom you can rely. Any individual has limitations, whereas the one you pray to is looked upon by you as limitless. Even without understanding, the Lord is looked upon as someone who is omniscient.
I think we can maybe like do two sections because it's so short.
Okay. What is omniscience? All-knowingness. No one understands totally what it means to be omniscient, to be all-knowing. To understand all knowledge, you must be all-knowing. However, our knowledge is limited. From this limited knowledge, we can always know a little more, but that also will be limited. What we can very easily understand, however, is limitation in knowledge. From that, we are able to appreciate that an omniscient person is free from limitation with respect to knowledge. This is what is meant by having an appreciation of omniscience. Who is the omniscient person? Is he or she another kind of person or one of us? There is therefore a great deal of knowledge to be known in order to appreciate Ishvara. The Lord, I invoke this Ishvara in the form of a prayer.
So any doubts here?
In this case, a guru is considered to be an omniscient in general, and of course, he's also seeking more knowledge. So, is he somebody close to being omniscient?
So omniscient would imply having all the knowledge that ever existed and that ever will exist. So I think here they are referring to Ishvara. Because the guru may be a jnani possibly, but the jnani may not have knowledge of everything that is there to be known in the world, right? For example, if we consider Shankaracharya jnani, he may not necessarily be able to speak Chinese or let me put more technically Mandarin or Cantonese. So whereas Ishvara is all knowledge. So there are six attributes to Bhagavan. So first is Samagra Jnanam, Samagrasya Jnanam. So like absolute knowledge, Samagrasya Vairagyam, which is absolute dispassion, Samagrasya Shriyam, which is absolute wealth, or whatever there is is Ishvara's glory. So it's Samagrasya Shriyam, Samagrasya Aishwaryam, absolute overlordship, Samagrasya Viryam, absolute power or capacity or potential, as you want to put it. And I think I missed one. But yeah, so here actually it's referring to Ishvara, not to the Jnani or to the Guru.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Can I have my take on it?
Yes, please.
Okay. So my understanding was a jnani or an atmajnani is a sarvavid or a omniscient person, not because he knows all the events. So for example, you ask, let's say, what is Martin doing in Alabama? That's not a right question to even ask. If you know clay, you know everything that's made of clay. If you know gold, you know everything that's made of gold, right? If you know the Atma, you know everything that's made of the Atma, which is pretty much everything. So Sarvavid Bhavati is knowing which you know everything else, is what the Upanishad says, right?
Right.
So when I say omniscient, it's not events in time, or it's not particular mithyas, but the cause that, I mean, the primal cause. Knowing the primal cause, you know all the effects. So that's what I thought is omniscience.
Actually, yeah, that definitely makes more contextual sense, because as the Upanishads go, like Brahma Vidyena Sarva Vidya Bhavati.
Right. So when I say omni as a jnani, it's Atma Jnana. When I say omni as a ajnani, it's events.
Yeah, that actually definitely makes sense. Yes.
So again, this is my interpretation of it, or one of my thoughts on it. So back to you.
Next section.
Okay. The results of prayer. Prayer is a karma and it produces an immediate result, a visible result. That you are able to invoke the Lord is the result. You have someone to rely on, someone who is all powerful, almighty, all knowledgeable, unlike anyone else. From this, you gain a certain strength, knowing that you can draw on this power to the extent that your capacity to draw on it allows. It is like having a huge reservoir of water. You need not bring all the water at once. It does not matter that you reciprocate in small. Just knowing that there is so much water in the reservoir gives you a certain strength. Thus, the immediate benefit you experience because you're able to pray is that there is someone for you who is all knowledge, upon whom you can draw whenever and as much as you want. This is the drashtaphala, the seen result. You experience it even as you pray. There is also an adrishtaphala, the unseen result of prayer. This is what we call grace, which accounts for benefits which we cannot attribute to a particular day's prayer. Shall I read the next one also?
Yeah, sure. Unless there are any questions or discussions that we can have here.
Yeah.
Okay, we can read the next.
I think there's also a book on prayer by Swamiji, right?
Yeah, it's like literally called the prayer book.
I mean, how do you pray and
it has many prayers, and these things are explained in a lot of detail.
yeah, I have to read that. More questions, I think.
Yeah, I think if it's clear to everybody, if it's to recap, there are two results to the prayers. One is a drashta phalam and the other is adrashta. So the drashta is what you experience immediately, that you feel a certain sense of comfort. There's a repose that is created when you pray to Ishvara, knowing that there's an infinite potential that can be tapped whenever one needs it. And then there are certain results which come to us, and we cannot identify those with any actions that we've done in the past, right? So, for example, if somebody just finds like a $500 note on the ground, for example, they can't really attribute that result to a particular cause in the past. Though, of course, we know that we don't believe in chance, we don't believe in good luck. Anytime we say there's something called good luck, it is nothing but good karma that you performed in the past which give rise to this particular result. And what people call bad luck is nothing but a result of your own wrong actions or own dharmic actions. So the two components to every action, there'll be an adrashta and a drashta phala. Immediate and delayed results. And by the way, this is the book in case people want the prayer book. So that's what Sixomerji was referring to.
Over here,
And it's like
prayer is the karma. So how do we really define as prayer? Because sometimes we don't know the language of a prayer which is given over here. Like I might not know the prayers or the mantras written, but just a thought that okay, I'm praying for you. Will that help? Is that also a karma?
yes, because you're generating a karma, right? For example, the karma can be performed in three ways. It's manasa, vachika, and kayika. So you can perform it through your mind, through your thoughts. You can perform it through your speech, and you can perform it through your bodily actions. So each of these generate karma. So for example, if you wish something well for others, then definitely there's an action that is created there. There's a karma that's involved, and it'll come and give rise to a result. Same way, you can also do something called tamasic puja, as they say, like tamasic forms of prayer, where you can wish something bad for somebody else to happen. That I hope this person falls sick, or I hope something bad happens to him, or whatever. So these are also going to bear result, definitely. But at the same time, it's going to give you a lot of chit ashuddhi. So, just a very simple example that we are all aware of. Shanti mantras, right? So when we say Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha, that may all beings be at peace, that is nothing but a good prayer that's not directed at any particular individual, but it's directed at all jivas in this entire jagat. So here, of course, that there will be a small iota of punya that is generated for each of these jivas, which is on account of your own prayer. So yeah, if you wish well for somebody, if somebody is not doing well, if they are sick, then definitely praying for them has an effect. Now, a lot of people have this question that sometimes we pray for a certain thing, but still the calamity doesn't go away, right? And it's again a matter of calculation. So suppose you have two things: you have durbala prarabdha and you have prabala prarabdha. So durbala prarabdha is weak prarabdha, which can be overcome through your own efforts, through your own prayers, through your own agami karma in general. And then you have something which is prabala prarabdha, which is prarabdha that's so strong that a lot of effort that is put into it will still not be enough to circumvent that problem. But at the same time, it lessens the problem. But if it doesn't go away, somehow we still feel that the prayer didn't work. Like for example, if you have a debt of $100,000 and you do enough effort to pay off like $13,000, right? So you're still left with a $70,000 debt, but you never think in your mind that I'm still 30,000 better off than I was earlier. But still, for a lot of people, they lose their shraddha because they feel that, see, I still have my debt, though I perform this action. So the way I see it is like, imagine there's a river that's flowing upstream or downstream, and you want to swim upstream. So the amount of effort that you have to make to flow upstream should be that your swimming should be faster than the flow of the river that's downstream, right? That will give you net positive result as you go up. But it's possible that the river flow may be far stronger than your own capacity to exert against it. And so you will see that you are still on the net result, you're still going downstream, but it's slower. So prayer always has a result. Even if it doesn't completely solve your problem, it will definitely mitigate it. And that is something that's very important to keep in mind.
Right.
And can you state that if you had not prayed, then whatever situation would have been worse? So by praying, you're making it definitely you're definitely giving the full intent to get the drishtapala. Whereas if you had not prayed, then the results of that action might have been worse.
Absolutely, and that's also what Swami Pujya Swamiji says. So he said that there was one female who came to him, and she said that, see, I pray so much, but still my mother-in-law is like so terrible. Like she keeps irritating me, and it's a nightmare living with her. So Swamiji says, I don't know. In fact, she said that my mother-in-law also prays a lot, and still she's such a bad person. So Swamiji said that imagine how she would be if she did not pray. So So, it definitely makes the situation better, though it may not become ideal. If the prarabdha is prabal, then you may not be able to circumvent it. You can maybe lessen it. If it's durbal, then you can completely solve the crisis.
I see.
Basically, prayer is a tool, essentially. Am I right? Or a form of assistance, anugraha?
Yes, it's a form of Ishwara Anugraha which we tap into. So through prayer, we tap into Ishwara Anugraha.
I'm curious to know, Sundarji has mentioned that, prayer requires sincerity and words are not important but the intent, which is absolutely true. When you're prayerful, you really have to be completely involved in what you're doing there. So Sundarji is mentioning it hit me like a sledgehammer when I read it 10 years back. Can you please expand upon that? I'm curious.
Sorry, there are a couple of conversations going on. What I was talking to was about Abhinavji, about the question of fate versus free will, which I also posted earlier. But on the question of intent versus words, the words don't count as much as the intent because the baby cries in only one language. And the best example for this would be Valmiki. He had the intent, but the words were completely wrong. Instead of saying Rama, he said Mara Mara. Mara means dead. Rama is something that brings everything to life, right? So even though your words are wrong, your intention is right, that itself will take you towards the positive goal. On the other hand, you also have people who can repeat the mantra but know nothing about it. That also will give them benefit. For example, there is Satyavrata and others who have repeated Bijaksharas, and it has led them to great results. Or what's his name? Not Ajamila. There is a famous one about Narayana. So there was a person who on his deathbed said Narayana. I think it's Ajamila story, where he just said Narayana. He was calling out to his son, and just because he said the Lord's name, he attained mukti. Right? So it works both ways. But start somewhere. Instead of not starting, start somewhere as the intent. But the question about the sledgehammer was more towards the post I made about fate versus free will. It's a beautiful reading.
Are you referring to the story from Chandrasekhara Indra Saraswati ji's Dialogues with the Guru?
No. That's
Okay.
a separate one. That's a fate versus free will, where we talked about, fate. Is fate stronger or adrishta or drishta?
Yeah.
So I won't tell what's in the conversation with Sri Chandrasekhara Indra Bharati Mahaswamigal.
Yeah.
But that's a nice thing to read. It has a beautiful flow, and whatever I say would only go against it, counter it, because he explains it better than anybody else.
It's beautiful. I also suggest everybody buy that book if they can. It's called Dialogues with the Guru, and it's a conversation with the, I believe, 34th Jagat Guru
Right.
of Sringeri.
And so, long story short, from my side, to answer your question, G, it was intent is important. Words are important, but intent is even more. It takes precedence over everything else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you can read this, Sundarji.
How does grace come to you? Grace is earned in the same way that you earn anything else.
Oh, Sobaji,
So,
sorry, you read the last two, right? If I understand correctly.
That's fine.
I'm in the right thing. How does grace
Ooh.
Go on.
Yeah.
since sorry, yeah. Since you
Yeah,
are
sorry,
not
go ahead.
relate an unseen result to a given course of action on your part in the immediate past, we are constrained to call this result grace. This grace is able to convert a mute into one who is eloquent and enables a lame person to climb a mountain. Kalidasa, the celebrated poet, was considered to be a mute, but because of grace he began pouring out verses. Similarly, Valmiki became a great poet because of grace. In day-to-day life, we often hear various stories of the disappearance of incurable diseases. Cancer suddenly vanishes, and no one knows how. We call it grace because the cause are not known. You can call such happening grace, accident, or chance. However, a prospective person with a certain maturity and understanding of Ishvara appreciates these unseen results as what we call grace.
Yeah, interesting that Sundarji mentioned this just a while ago about Valmiki and the story of Mara Mara turning to Rama Rama as he continued to chant it. And
He was
that was also great grace.
He was the Angulimal. That is the story, right?
No,
He
Angulimal
was.
was, I think it's a Buddhist time, that story.
It's
Angulimal is a different story.
Ratnakara.
Ratnakara, okay. I mean, Valmiki. I mean, okay.
So
Okay.
Valmiki was a bandit in the forest, and he had a wife and he had two parents who he was living with. And I think once, Narada plants the seed of doubt in his mind, as he usually does, that um, I don't think you're doing the right thing, but he just gives him something to self-reflect upon. So Valmiki ji goes back home, and he's asking his wife that, will you share whatever papam comes my way with me? So she's like, look, I'm your devout wife, and I've always followed whatever you said, and I've always, been a dharma patni and this and that. But whatever papam you created, only you will receive, right? I mean, I cannot be participant in this. So then he's like, okay, what about my parents, right? So he's asking his mother. She's like, see, we are old and infirm, and we cannot like live by ourselves. We are only taking whatever you provide. But at the same time, we've brought you up, we've given you good values, this and that. But ultimately, whatever papam you commit is only your own. So if you are stealing from other people, it is your own papam because it is your dharma to provide for us. But then how you do it is up to you. The fact that we consume is not our fault. So, basically they're telling Valmiki that if you've done something wrong, you have to eventually bear the results of it. So that really gets Valmiki to reflect. And of course, his meeting with Narada does bring about a positive transformation eventually. And Valmiki ji becomes such a great saint at that point that I think there's an incident where he sits in meditation. He continues chanting Rama's name, like he does Satatam Japa, Rama, 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 Rama. He continues to do, and the description is such that there's an anthill that's built around him. A huge termite mound is built and it's covering Valmiki, and he doesn't awake from it because he's so immersed into chanting Rama's name. And then, this whole Narada gives the seed of the story. He gives him a short summary of it, and Brahmaji, if I remember correctly, gives him the Divya Drashti to see the events firsthand of whatever happened, and then that's where the entire composition of the Ramayana begins. So,
Yeah, right. Thank you.
sure. Gulimal that you refer to is actually it's present in some Buddhist times, and there was a story regarding that, and then he became a monk eventually. Shall we do this one? And then we can start verse 9 next time. Who's next?
Is it me?
Oh, okay, yeah, yes.
The invisible result of prayer. In a prayer, what you really realize is an invisible force causing you the adrishtaphala, the unseen result. The very system, the laws that produce certain results, which are not visible to us, are reorganized by prayer. Certain elements are introduced through prayer into the invisible system, causing it to reorganize itself. However, we do not know how it will be reorganized. This is why the results are said to be the caused by grace. Grace, therefore, is something that we receive purely as a result of our own karma. Actions either in our immediate past or in the remote past. Because of this result, the grace, certain situation happens in our favor. What is generally taken to be impossible is made possible by grace. In fact, all life is like that. The impossible is made possible. With this verse, I salute Bhagavan, the one by whose grace the mute becomes eloquent, the lame scales the mountain top, the one by whose grace the impossible is made possible. The final verse of the Gītā Dhyanam describes various beings who praise this all-knowing God.
So I guess, Sudhirji, if you want to chant this verse, then we can again begin with it next time.
Okay. Yam brahma varunendra rudra marutah स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैर्गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुः सुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः. हरि ओम्.
हरि ओम्. ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. हरि ओम्. श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः. हरि ओम्. So